back and on the record from CompTIA's Breakaway down here in Texas. And I'm speaking with Dan Wensley, who's the partner development and marketing expert for Level Platforms. Dan, done this with you and sat down with you many times before. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Rob.
Dan, you guys, I think you were on that very first phone call I had with Peter about, I don't know, seems like about 200 years ago, where he started telling me about this thing called managed services. And if I remember, I pretty much blew him off and said, I'm not getting involved in that stuff. Like, come back when you have something real to sell.
Right.
Other than the fact that I think it was probably one of the biggest mistakes in my career, and I've made lots of them. Tell us, why is it growing so fast and where's it going next?
Well, it's interesting you say it seems like 200 years ago, because there's always been a lot of debate, is this a revolution or an evolution? And we've really seen it as another evolution of our industry. And over the past, not 200, but 5 to 7 years, with the new technologies that have come in, not only from vendors like Level Platforms and the PSAs and the others who have influenced, it's also the greater IT community. So it all started with the technology. The ideals around the financial viability of recurring revenue versus transient break fix, that's a no-brainer. But why has it taken 20 years to get to the point that we can do it? It's really been about technology. So we've been a part of that technology evolution and revolution to bring in the products that allow the migration to a managed services. And then it's the adoption of the channel. It's the adoption of the traditional reseller who became the value-added reseller, who became the solution provider, to now take their business model to the new heights, leveraging these technologies.
So there's about, from what I know, about 12,000 people in the industry, so reseller organizations who've adopted this.
Yes.
That means there's about 65,000 that have not.
Right.
And I hear from them all sorts of things. I mean, one of them is, well, I don't want to be on some type of recurring revenue model. I don't know, but in my business, if you offer me a recurring revenue model, matter of fact, if you can automate and do that for me, that would be really, really nice. And then if you can make it so that my hours are better, so I don't have to work as many hours, and that I can give better service to my customers.
Sounds like a no-brainer, doesn't it?
Then what's wrong with these other 65,000?
Well, change is the hardest thing to implement, and change is the hardest thing to sell. So again, the fundamentals around what we're doing, the technology is there, the value proposition there. You're right in saying it's a win for everybody. It's a win for the vendor community. It is a win for the solution provider, and it is an absolute win for the end user who's getting better reliability on their IT environment. The crux of it is change. So, you'll remember the late 90s when we went from reseller to value-added reseller, and this industry adopted services for the first time. There was a lot of pushback. And now, happy to say, when you look at IDC or Gartner, they're reporting 2/3 of top-line revenue from these guys are coming from professional services. That took over 10 years to evolve. So perhaps we're slow, perhaps we're but we're also in the IT business. We're taking on new technologies and new innovations all the time. But it has been a bit of pushing a rope here a little bit to get the whole market to change. There's a lot of factors to it. There's the IT professional inside the reseller. There is the IT guy that they may be selling to. And I boil it down to one thing, frankly. It's not the inability or the non-desire for the reseller to take on a managed service. They have done so well with antiquated break fix, truck roll, transient revenue. They have serviced their customers so well that when they come in with even better technology to service those customers, the customers have no perceived need. They're saying, you know what, you have done a great job giving me IT solutions over the last 10 years. When something breaks, I call you, you're here. I'll sit in environments like this, as we did today, ask how many of these resellers carry the keys to the end users' environments, literally to their offices, and 60% of the hands go up. So that's a great level of service that the solution provider community has been providing. So there's a lot of factors to it. At the end of the day, we know it's coming. We know it's got a benchmark, a beachhead that we've created. There's folks doing phenomenally well with it, and we will be there.
I would say so, but I would also say there's probably of those 65,000, probably 50,000 of them who will never get there. They just don't get it, I think. And I think the problem is that the mix of the type of people that are in this industry, there's so many of them who have come into the industry because they got laid off, come into the industry because they like to do break fix stuff, or because they like to tinker, or whatever it is. And I think the industry itself is moving a lot more towards these, business professionals who are going to be, who really understand.
So let me debate that with you. The debate is, will the tinkerers in technology who own that trusted advisor relationship with the customers ever adopt this? Or will they realize that we're not taking away that ability to be a technology expert, we're actually enhancing it? If we're giving them more tools, more capability to do the things they're actually good at, and that's why I said one of the barriers to entry has been the IT guy inside a solution provider who said, I own all the IP, I own all the information, you can't run this business without me. Where we've seen the greatest step forward is those guys adopting these technologies, saying, wow, you're empowering me more, not empowering me less to do my job. So I hope that we're sitting here in another 5 years, and this is potentially, another mistake, because we are absolutely planning to get all 65,000 using technologies, whether it's ours or others or what's going on, to service, because it makes the most sense for everybody. It makes it a win for the end user. Get paid for your IT solutions for uptime. Don't pay for downtime.
And I think that you'll have your 65,000 more or in the industry, but they won't be all the people who are in the industry now.
Valid.
I think a ton of those people will work for those companies or merge into another company or be the break fix guy for that company. But you're going to see people who are more business oriented coming in, because the whole industry is moving more towards business solutions.
Yeah, that's where we totally agree. I think the folks who will not make this adoption will not buy into the business aspect and the acumen that it's going to take to do this, because going to a recurring revenue model versus a transient break fix model or a transactional based model has a lot more business aspect to it than just being a technologist. So I agree, there will be 65,000 folks servicing the millions of SMB customers. They will be utilizing this technology. They will be on a recurring revenue model, whether it's the same folks we've got here today. We went through it 10 years ago when we went from high hardware margin to low.
And we lost a ton of ours, if you'll remember then.
Absolutely.
And then we grew them back up. And then, of course, after 9/11 and everything went with that, a lot of them, we lost a ton more again.
Right.
But yeah, it's an interesting industry. And you talk about change, so the comment I've been making right through this whole breakaway is that everything changes, except unfortunately the people. We live in an industry that's driving all the change for everybody else in the world, and yet our industry itself is, sorry to say it, but too thick to change. And I mean, what have they got to lose? Better service for their customers. Oh, well, that's a bad thing. Easier to make, easier revenue, and less time that they have to put in, so they can actually have a real social life. Maybe see their kids, play with their friends, whatever it is.
I mean, what the reseller channel has been able to accomplish over the last decade without tools is astonishing, really, and the ability now to really run a sound business. So I think you're right. There is nothing but upside, nothing but opportunity for them to adopt it, and it's going to be there.
So you guys are in the MSP world, and I know Peter, I know you far too well to believe that that's where you're going to stay. How does your company migrate into the cloud, and how are you going to take your customers with you?
We're doing it now, and frankly, we've been doing it over the last 5 years. I mean, from the foundational, comprehension of managed services and the foundational architecture of the technology, this was the vision of specifically Peter, to understand that change is going to happen, as you said, in our industry. It always will, it always has, and it's going to continue. If we had architected the technology alone to fit the time, we'd be obsolete already. what is really has come to fruition over the last 3 years is the integration we've done with the existing vendor partner community. As Cisco launched SmartCare, as Intel launched vPro, we've been able to be right there at the cutting edge and integrate those solutions and their managed service capability into the platform. That name is not by chance. Now we're seeing the next evolution. Thankfully, cloud computing has taken over the hype cycle for managed services in the last year. It is now not, wow, managed services, what is that? What's the definition? Proud to say after 5 years of talking about it, we're over that hype cycle. Cloud computing is now doing it. But again, now there's the opportunity. Do we become an obsolete platform because of this change? No, we've been able to step right in, adopt cloud services. How quickly that's going to be adopted by the channel is another topic for debate, but we're right there today. With those adopting it, they're able to continue their MSP practice.
And then you've got the program that you're working on with us to go out into the marketplace and actually help the resellers or the MSPs or the cloud providers or whatever, but help all of them. Let's put it that way, to make it much easier for them to talk to their customers and say, here's not what the technology is. We're certainly not going to say, here's how you can get more gigabytes for a little bit less money, but to talk to them about, here's new ways that we can deliver the technology to you so that it's always on, always available, and it can help you with your business.
Yeah, there's a lot of debate around that. You guys are certainly helping. We did a session today and a panel, and that's now the area of largest conversation is how do I even change my sales reps to make the change from transactional hardware and traditional software sales to doing a consultative sale around managed services. And again, this has been another barrier to entry for the overall adoption of it is right down to that grassroots street level of how do I get a sales rep who used to sell speeds and feeds of a router to sell consultative sales to show them how managed services, including the router, including all the software that we're pulling through with it, to make that transitional change. So certainly you folks are helping us on that quite a bit.
And we call it the last mile.
Are we in the last mile?
Well, no, but we're starting to work on the last mile. Right. We're just starting to touch the edges of it. But the answer is to that question, and I hate to say this, and I really, I hope nobody's going to throw anything at me, but I've been throwing lots of things at me. But the reality is that a lot of those salespeople who are, speed and feed guys and break fix guys, they're not going to make it into the next level. And if they do make it into the next level, it'll be where they're working for somebody else, not working for themselves, and they're very specific, or be a contractor to the other VARs.
Yeah, it was interesting. One of the things that came up in the panel today was, do you have salespeople or do you have sales engineers? And I think the latter, if you've got a sales engineer, they're in risk. Now, they're still going to be needed an important part of that ecosystem to provide the solution, but the salespeople who are able to identify need, understand value, position that, open probe question, are absolutely proving they can be successful, and it's not transitioning. What they're transitioning from is not hardware to managed services. It is selling not hardware, but selling a service. It still is about understanding the need of the end user, your customer, and then fulfilling that. Just not with a piece of hardware, that comes with the service.
So if you and I were to go into business, although I'm going into a business with somebody else, so I have to be careful.
We live close together. We can put an office in my barn or your place, and we're good.
But the reality is, we could go out there, hire a team, and we could run the business. And because you're not technical, as far as I know, I'm definitely not technical, as everybody knows. I got the button on the speaker, and I was really proud of that.
Well, you had to help me, so that explains it. Yes,
that's right. So the fact is, though, is that you don't have to be a techie anymore. You don't need that. You can buy it, and there's people like you, and then the Autotasks and ConnectWise and so on the other side, and the Tiger Paws, and trying to name them all. But
I think you covered it.
Pretty much, and then you've got more people like at each end and, all over the place. People who are coming in like with, like an On-Force or whoever happens to. There's a whole bunch of them that are coming in. A VAR doesn't have to be a techie. A VAR has to be somebody who is there to hold the hand of the customer, to let them know that there's somebody there that's going to be there for them and to help them out. not only with keeping their technology running, but to make the technology work better for them.
You and I both obviously rely on more technical oriented people than we are to help us execute. I've always firmly believed, and I think it was Ryan Morris who said it in front of me first, it is not about the IT, it's about the business of IT. So it's the business wrapper around it. It is not speeds and feeds. Those are just delivery mechanisms that you go to a sales engineer and make sure we've got this. But it's about identifying that need, and it's about the business. At the end of the day, it's solving a problem. And for the small to medium business, they're not buying technology. They are buying an enablement tool to run their business. Now, that might be a new truck for what they do, or it might be a new server and a SQL database. But either way, they don't need the speed and feed of that truck. They need to know, will it help me deliver and grow my business? And that's the core of it.
Yeah, I remember when I was talking about it earlier today, I went into a client's office and they wanted us to sell this new and improved monitor. And this is about 10 years ago. And so they brought it into the room, and I looked at it, and it was a retail product, and on the product they showed me all the specs, they showed me the packaging of
Right.
it. And I looked at it and I read it, and the company was out in Japan, and I turned to them and I go, is this in Japanese? And they looked at me and they go, of course not, Japanese. And they start to have me, I go, well, it certainly isn't English. And so I said to them, let me ask you something. And I started asking them about the things that it said on their box
Right.
that the thing will do.
Right.
And so the person who is the VP of marketing, he looks at me and he says to me, just a minute, I'll get a techie to come in. Okay, he brought in the techie, and the techies from their own company couldn't tell me what the box said. But hey, it sounded really good, you can do this, all about speeds and feeds.
Yeah.
We finally, I think the industry's growing up from that part, and we're realizing that like every other industry, stop selling the product and start selling the benefits.
And you know what? I don't think they take enough credit, or we give them enough credit for already doing that. If 2/3 of their top line revenue is coming from services already, they've got to be selling already on more than speeds and feeds. They are uncovering that need. This is the box you need. And by the way, my value add as the reseller here is the setup, is the additional value I'm bringing to you. And frankly, that is, to me, selling more than speeds and feeds. That is selling value of your service.
Yeah, but they don't know how to do it formally. But informally,
they get it done.
Well, you think about it. Have you ever heard of a small business saying that they've gone out of business because their technology doesn't work?
Right.
And yet all the technology that's in there's not one application that I've ever seen where it's all done by one manufacturer. It's done by all these different people with different specs and different everything. And if the manufacturer walks in there, they would say, well, that's not the way it was meant to be used.
Right.
But you know what? It works.
Finding the solution.
And they're there, and they've taken away the FUD factor, all that fear and the uncertainty, the doubt, and they really have become, no matter how you look at it, such an unbelievable trusted business advisor to them. And yet, at the same time, as we're making this new transition into much more business solutions and more, all of that, so many of them aren't taking that step. And I hope you're going to agree with me, but I think
100%. And frankly, we did it with our naming convention again. So when they made the transition from value-added reseller to solution provider, that was exactly that. It was a total solution sale that I'm taking all that all that technology factor out of it. I'm going to provide you with a solution. So, I remember we were in Linux 10 years ago talking the same way as how am I going to use technology, whether it's Microsoft or Linux or anything else, and it was all about just providing a total solution for your customer. And so I really think, again, we're self-fulfilling a prophecy that change is going to be too hard or too much. We're doing it today. I really believe the folks who are, at this event and every other event we go to, they're doing it today. Just because it's called managed services, it does have some change required. It does have some adoption, but frankly, look back at what you're doing already, because you're doing a lot of it today.
Absolutely. And with your help, we're trying to brand them into a new category of a trusted business advisor.
Yeah.
The channel has told us over and over again they love that, and the reality is that we don't just want to give them a name this time. We want to make sure that they live up to that name, and they will.
And reap the rewards of it. Reap the higher revenue numbers, and more importantly, to your point, the profit numbers with less effort, because providing even better service to your end user.
So the reality is that they've got two choices. They can continue doing what they want, or they can make their life easier, make more money, and service their customers better. You choose, because to me it seems obvious.
Absolutely.
Dan,
Thank
always
you.
a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy the rest of the event.
I will.